In 80 AD, nearly 50,000 spectators packed the Roman Colosseum to watch brutal spectacles unfold in the arena. At its center stood helpless victims, surrounded by crowds hungry for entertainment. But these events were more than sport. They were tools of control, propaganda, and power. Behind Rome's achievements in law and engineering existed a culture that turned suffering into public performance, where death became theater and cruelty became policy. The arena as an instrument of power. The Roman Empire at its height ruled over nearly 60 million people, and across its vast territories stood more than 250 amphitheaters. These structures were not merely venues for games, they were tools of social control. The Colosseum itself hosted frequent events that kept citizens engaged and distracted while reinforcing loyalty to the empire. Ancient historians estimated that hundreds of thousands of people died in Roman arenas over several centuries. These deaths were not accidental or random acts of violence. They were organized, scheduled, and funded by the state. Emperors invested enormous resources into spectacles because they understood their political value. Public entertainment demonstrated Rome's dominance and reminded citizens of the consequences of defying authority. Philosopher Seneca, who personally witnessed the games, described how exposure to such violence hardened spectators, making them more cruel and desensitized. The arena, he argued, changed people by teaching them to enjoy suffering. This transformation was precisely what Roman leadership intended. By turning death into entertainment, the state fostered obedience and collective complicity. Origins in funeral rituals. Roman gladiatorial combat did not begin as public entertainment. Its roots lay in ancient funeral rituals. In 264 BC, 3 Roman brothers staged fights between enslaved men to honor their deceased father. These combats were believed to satisfy the spirits of the dead through blood sacrifice. Over time, what began as religious duty evolved into political opportunity. Wealthy families and politicians organized increasingly elaborate games to demonstrate status and gain public support. The more dramatic the spectacle, the greater the prestige. The armor worn by gladiators often represented Rome's defeated enemies. Fighters dressed as conquered warriors symbolized Roman victory in every battle staged before the crowd. Death in the arena thus became a visual reminder of imperial supremacy. As popularity grew, temporary wooden seating was replaced by permanent amphitheaters. These structures became monuments to Rome's authority, where violence served both symbolic and political purposes. The slaughter of exotic animals. Roman spectacles soon expanded beyond human combat. Exotic animals from across the empire were transported to arenas to participate in staged hunts known as venations. Lions from Africa, leopards from Asia, crocodiles from the Nile, and even giraffes were captured and displayed. These animals were not exhibited as rare wonders, but treated as disposable victims. Their deaths demonstrated Rome's ability to dominate nature itself. The message was clear. If Rome could control the most powerful creatures on earth, it could control anything. Historical records describe massive animal slaughters during major celebrations. At the inauguration of the Colosseum, thousands of animals were killed in a single festival. Archaeological evidence suggests many were deliberately starved or weakened beforehand to ensure dramatic confrontations. The logistical effort behind these spectacles was immense. Animals were captured across continents, transported under brutal conditions, and delivered to Rome's arenas. Some ancient writers even warned that certain species were disappearing due to relentless hunting for entertainment. The arena was therefore not only a stage of human suffering, but also a force of ecological destruction. Engineered combat and unequal battles. Contrary to popular imagination, gladiatorial contests were rarely fair fights between evenly matched opponents. Roman entertainment relied heavily on imbalance and suspense. Prisoners and criminals were often forced into combat against trained warriors with little chance of survival. Some were given inadequate weapons or no combat experience. transforming the contest into public execution disguised as sport. Gladiators were categorized by fighting styles and equipment. One might carry a net and trident, while another wore heavy armor designed to counter that strategy. These differences created dramatic tension for spectators, but often ensured predictable outcomes. Even protective gear sometimes increased suffering. Certain helmets restricted vision or added extreme weight, turning combat into physical torment. The goal was not simply victory, but spectacle, the prolonged display of struggle and vulnerability. Public executions as performance. By midday, gladiatorial contests often gave way to executions. These punishments were theatrical and symbolic, designed to reflect the alleged crimes of the condemned. Criminals, prisoners of war, and enslaved individuals were subjected to damnatio ad bestias, or condemnation to the beasts. Victims were tied to stakes or placed in vulnerable positions, while wild animals were released. The unpredictability of these encounters intensified the crowd's excitement. These executions also carried moral messaging. Each punishment represented justice in action, reinforcing Roman law through public demonstration. Yet the theatrical nature of the events blurred the line between justice and entertainment. Spectators bet on survival times and cheered violent outcomes, transforming suffering into communal amusement. Mythological executions and theatrical death. Roman spectacles eventually merged execution with storytelling. Prisoners were forced to reenact scenes from mythology, often ending in fatal outcomes. Individuals played legendary characters only to die in ways mirroring their roles. A performer portraying a mythological figure might be attacked by animals or subjected to elaborate staged deaths. These performances combined humiliation, punishment, and theatrical display. Such events revealed how deeply entertainment, religion, and power were intertwined in Roman society. Mythology was no longer sacred narrative, but a framework for public execution. Naval battles and engineering marvels. Roman ambition extended beyond land-based spectacles. The empire staged mock naval battles called naumachiae, flooding arenas or constructing massive basins to simulate sea warfare. Thousands of prisoners were forced to participate in these battles aboard real ships. They fought with genuine weapons, and survival was rare. These events demonstrated Rome's engineering capabilities as well as its authority over nature itself. Constructing these spectacles required extraordinary resources, including artificial lakes and dedicated water systems. Such efforts highlighted the immense value Rome placed on entertainment as a display of imperial power. Expanding the boundaries of spectacle. As Roman society evolved, the nature of arena entertainment grew increasingly extreme. Women were occasionally forced to fight, sometimes against animals or unusual opponents. Prisoners were burned publicly or subjected to prolonged torture. Certain punishments served as warnings to the population. Public suffering reinforced the consequences of disobedience and discouraged resistance. Even emperors participated in the spectacle. Emperor Commodus famously entered the arena as a gladiator, staging carefully controlled victories that enhanced his public image. These performances blurred the distinction between ruler and entertainer while emphasizing absolute authority. Social and cultural consequences. Roman spectacles were more than isolated events. They shaped the empire's cultural values and social behavior. Continuous exposure to violence normalized cruelty and altered public expectations. Critics within Roman society recognized the dangers. Some philosophers warned that the games corrupted moral character and encouraged brutality. Others argued that excessive spending on entertainment drained state resources. The demand for increasingly grand spectacles placed enormous financial strain on the empire. Emperors competed to outdo their predecessors, investing heavily in games while other infrastructure suffered. This culture of distraction also shifted public priorities. citizens became accustomed to free food and constant entertainment, reducing civic engagement and political responsibility. Decline of the arena. By the late Roman Empire, economic pressures and shifting values contributed to the decline of arena spectacles. Financial resources dwindled, and public attitudes gradually changed. By the 5th century, many amphitheaters, including the Colosseum, fell silent. The structures remained, but the roaring crowds disappeared. What once symbolized imperial strength became a reminder of excess and moral decay. The history of Roman entertainment raises enduring questions about the relationship between power, spectacle, and society. Can a civilization that celebrates suffering sustain its moral foundation? Rome's eventual decline suggests the dangers of normalizing violence as entertainment. The legacy of Roman spectacle. Today, the ruins of the Colosseum stand as one of the world's most recognizable landmarks. Visitors admire its architecture and engineering achievements, yet beneath its grandeur lies a complex legacy. Roman arenas reveal how entertainment can be used to shape public perception, enforce authority, and reinforce social order. They demonstrate the power of spectacle to influence collective behavior and normalize extreme actions. The story of Roman entertainment is not simply about cruelty. It is a lesson about the relationship between power and public fascination. A reminder that societies must carefully consider what they celebrate and why. The echoes of the arena continue to resonate through history, urging reflection on the consequences of turning suffering into spectacle. If you want more untold stories, hidden truths, and the dark side of history they never teach in school, make sure to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.